The fifth Arcanum teaches us a lot about the constitution of man. The incarnate human can be considered, temporarily, and from a practical point of view, as being composed of three elements. 1. A conscious man possessing willpower, able to meditate, and having the ability to perform what we call creative activities. 2. A man of impulses, functioning by reflexes, and automatically reacting to most outer impressions, according to some simple pattern. 3. A physical machine, his body, which is at the disposal of his two superior elements. The problem of knowledge about that machine belongs rather to anatomy, physiology, and their related subjects. For the purpose of the present study, I will mention only briefly about the analogous ternary, head, thorax, and abdomen, and also about the fact that the quality and quantity of nervous energy in man, that is, nervous fluids, depends entirely upon the quality and quantity of his blood, which are the factors and, at the same time, the direct result of the vital juices created by the process of digestion. What are the relationships between the impulsive man and the conscious one? The first, from the very nature of things, is a passive man. He reacts to all outer impressions in accordance with definite and unchangeable laws. According to the basic arcana, he is a triple entity. In him dwells an emotional man, living by instinct and having certain needs. Then there is also the waking man, who possesses passions, and lives by vaguely expressed cravings and lusts, which should not be confused with the man's conscious desires. And finally, there is an intellectual man, living under the direction of his mind, which manifests as an ability of automatic calculation. The purpose of the conscious man is to limit and to extinguish the reflexes of the impulsive man, and often to turn them in the opposite direction. The underdeveloped, impulsive man will tear away his hand with great speed from a hot object, while a conscious man can dominate such an impulse and even play the role of mutius scaevola. The better developed, impulsive man may answer flattery with a smile, but the conscious one will suppress that smile and even turn it into a grimace, because he is able to see through such things. An intellectually impulsive man is an apostle of routine, an enemy of new hypotheses, and a patron of pupils who automatically use the old standardized methods and formulas, even to the point of applying them to quite different and unsuitable problems and things. All these three phases of the impulsive man can easily produce in him deviations and offenses in some realms, unless the conscious man opposes them. The lowest phase may create material transgressions, a typical example of which is drunkenness. The middle phase represents another kind of offense, such as immorality. It is that astral immorality which multiplies itself by way of imagination in the form of sensual manifestations. In the third phase, the intellectually impulsive man generates offenses based on automatic activities, like gambling, and so on. A number of controversial questions should now be solved, in order to avoid them in the course of study of later arcana. A. Is it possible for a conscious man to lose temporarily or permanently control over his body? Yes, in some cases. 1. When the conscious counterpart is absent, but the impulsive one present, as in dream or lethargy. 2. When certain nerve cells belonging to the organs of sensation and the motivation centers are damaged or diseased, when some nerve breaks down, when circulation of the nervous fluids is disrupted, or, as doctors say, there are functional disorders of the nervous system as a whole. All these obstacles may, in some instances, make it impossible for the conscious man to control his impulsive brother. This means that then common sense cannot dominate instinct, and harmony cannot rule over the animistic realm. B. What deformation can appear in the sphere of human imagination? In order to answer the question properly, we should first realize that forms, born from the processes of imagination, also depend, apart from the qualities of their related astrosome, upon two basic influences. 1. Activity of the sense organs. 2. The regulating logic of our mental principle. If our spirit ceases to act properly in the creation of forms, then our imagination becomes only a fantasy. If our nerves, as intermediaries between the impressions received by our sense and consciousness, act wrongly, pathologically, or even create images without any outer justification, then we have what are called hallucinations. C. How does the use of alcohol influence a man in different stages of drunkenness? We can distinguish 3 phases of a man's conditions resulting from the consumption of alcohol. 1. When a man takes a certain quantity of alcohol, it becomes absorbed into his bloodstream and augments the dynamic character of his blood. At such a moment, ganglions, which are the reserve stores for nervous force, begin to release this force in very generous amounts. Then one gets the opportunity to intensify one's mental activities and physical efficiency. It is interesting to note that Papus himself recommended public speakers to take a small glass of pure brandy before tedious lecturing. We may, of course, agree or disagree with this recommendation of the famous occultist. 2. Then comes the second phase, when more alcohol enters the organism. The physical machine uses more nervous energy than man's mental and spiritual counterparts, and now the impulses cannot be balanced or properly controlled by the consciousness. They assume a disorderly character, from which comes aggressiveness, indecent gestures, and words, and so on. 3. The third or final phase occurs when the stores of nervous force are empty. Now it is the astrosome which must replace them. It must then care for the organism, while giving nothing of its astral energy to the man's consciousness. This means the deep sleep of a dead drunk man. D. What is hypnosis? In the hypnotic process, the hypnotist strongly irritates the patient's nervous centers, which direct his sense organs. By this fact, he separates the impulsive counterpart of man from his conscious principle. In its place, he puts his own will to rule over the manifestations of the impulsive man instead of the man himself. That is the theoretical truth. Here I am considering only the method for obtaining full hypnosis without any magnetic action, only by way of attracting and holding the sight of the patient by means of shining objects or whirling mirrors, the usual Western method, or through sounds, such as the monotonous repetition of the same sound or sounds, like the beating of gongs and their incantations, Eastern methods used by the fakirs when producing their hypnotic tricks. Sometimes fear is also used by certain unscrupulous hypnotists. E. How are we to understand insanity? This is a very interesting subject. We have to distinguish between 2 kinds of mental unbalance. Only the first is known to official medical science. 1. Insanity derived from physical sources. 2. Insanity arising from the astral. According to its symptoms, mental sickness can often be compared to a continuous state of drunkenness, in its second phase as previously described. Impulses of a special character prevail in each insane person. They are related to the activity of certain nerve centers. Of course, such conditions can arise because of organic or functional disorders of the nervous system. But it is also possible to stimulate certain centers to the detriment of others, from the point of view of astral factors. It is the astrosome which created the body and which directs its manifestations. The spirit, mental, of man manifests itself only through the astrosome. Now, imagine that a foreign astral entity joins your astrosome and begins to rule the body together with its proper owner. We will then get abnormal manifestations in both the astral and physical activities of the man, often resulting in the impossibility of any mental functions, because the original astrosome has been paralyzed by the intruder. A strong larva belonging to the man himself, or coming from the outer world, can also join the man's astrosome. This will be an example of permanent incarnation for a larva, which usually means the appearance of a special type of offense peculiar to that larva which masters the insane person concerned. Larvas, as all inferior astral entities, try to obtain life in matter much denser than their own. That is, in the physical world. They have no moral qualities, so they show no concern about the immense harm they bring to the hapless man they obsess. Such a little devil will first try to develop in man the ability of practicing that offense or abnormality in full. When the body is exhausted, the larva usually tries to destroy it, in order to free itself for further incarnations.